In order, the
Everything's okay.
City Council meeting of Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. This, is, among other things, is our organizational meeting. Please call the roll.
Mr. Knoll, Ms. Zatrak,
Here.
Ms. Weltman,
Here.
Ms. Godin. Here. Mr. Lemay.
Here.
Mr. Gentili. Dr. Wong.
Here.
Good evening. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first agenda item would be the approval of the minutes of December 7th and December 18th and December 30th. We have a motion regarding minutes of December 7th, please, for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak,
Abstain?
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godin.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Thank you. And approval of the minutes of December 18th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak,
Abstain.
Ms. Weltman,
Abstain.
Ms. Godin,
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
And finally, approval of the minutes of December 30th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak,
Abstain.
Ms. Weltman.
Yes.
Ms. Godin.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Uh, First, we have a motion to confirm a Director of Public Safety in the city. I have served in that role for many years. We would need a motion of myself or anyone in order to move on here.
Motion to nominate Rick Bain as Director of Public Safety. Second.
All right. Richard Bain will carry on as the mayor.
Richard Bain, to make sure I got the right guy.
Is there a second?
Yes.
All right. Any discussion, please? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godin. Yes. Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Next, we look for a motion to elect a vice mayor for the coming year.
Make a motion to elect Attorney Gentili as Vice Mayor for the upcoming year.
I second.
Any further nominations? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godin.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Abstain.
Dr. Wong.
Yes. You can vote for yourself.
Congratulations, sir.
Can I? Thank you.
Congratulations. Next, we look for a motion to elect a member of council to the City Planning Commission.
Motion to elect Melanie Weltman as a member of the City Planning Commission.
Second.
Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak.
Yes.
Ms. Weltman.
Is it our custom to abstain?
It's up to you. Some people abstain, some don't.
Yes. I don't know.
Okay. Ms. Godin.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Next, we'll look for a motion for 4 different committees. First, the Finance Committee. Are there any nominations?
Yes, I make a motion to nominate 3 council members for the Finance Committee, Mr. Lemay, Ms. Godick, and Ms. Zatrak, with Mr. Lemay being the chair of the committee.
Second. Or should I?
Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Can we
Because we're
vote on
voting
three
for
at
all,
once?
are we voting all 3 at
We're
once?
voting all
Yeah,
3 at once.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
Okay. Then,
Ms.
then I won't abstain. I will vote yes.
Okay. Ms. Zatrak, yes. Ms.
Yes.
Weltman. Ms. Godin.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Next, the Road and Infrastructure and Safety Committee.
Motion to nominate Ms. Godick and Mr. Gentili for Road and Infrastructure Committee with Mr. Gentili as the chair, and also 3 resident members of the Road and Infrastructure Committee, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Ergen, and Ms. Halloran.
Are there any other nominations? All right, do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Abstain.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Next, nominations for the Communication Committee.
Motion to nominate for the council members, Mr. Newell, Mr. Gentili, and Ms. Wong, with Mr. Newell as a chair, and a resident member, Ms. Halloran.
Wait, we're having one person on two committees? We're having one resident on,
Yes.
Are there any other nominations?
okay.
Is there a second to Mr. LeMay's motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Abstain.
Dr. Wong?
Abstain?
And finally, the Parks and Beautification Committee.
I'll nominate Ms. Zatrak, Ms. Godek, Ms. Weltman, and Ms. Huang as
Why don't
council
you start again? Because I'm confused what you said.
Nominate Ms. Zatrak, Ms. Weltman, and Ms. Wong, with Ms. Zatrak as the chair, and two resident members, Ms. Bronstein and Mr. Eichhoff, as members of the Parks Committee.
Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, is there a second for Mr. LeMay's motion?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Next, we move on to the Civil Service Commission. A motion to confirm the reappointment of Mr. Daniel Carter as the Chair of the Civil Service Commission for a term ending 12/31/2030.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, roll call, please.
I have one question just before we vote on this. Is it typical for council to vote on the chair of a commission? I saw that for this one and the next one. Or are we strictly voting on them as members of the commission, and then those commissions or committees then select their own chair within it? I understand council nominating a chair because really it's our group that's doing it. I don't know how we feel about a chair being set and what that term would be. So I wanted a little
Yeah. that's a good
discussion
point.
about it, just so that we're not pigeonholing somebody into a role for their entire term.
Right.
That there is some flexibility in that with the nomination, because this won't come up again. I think this term ends in 30/30.
Yeah,
so
I had the
that's a
same
ways away.
concern on the ABR one. The ordinance doesn't provide for us. It's just appointment, but not as a
Well, they
chair.
can select their own. I don't care.
What's that?
They can select their own, I suppose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Then
think
it-
that's,
I would be more comfortable just voting on the member, not as a chair. If
Okay. I'm sure they're gonna, that's fine.
Okay.
Let's vote.
Thank you.
so the motion is to confirm the appointment of Daniel Carter to the Civil
Yes,
Service
yeah.
Commission,
Yes,
term
sir.
ending 12/31/2030.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Zatrak?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
And we'll modify number 8
Thank you.
to confirm the appointment of Hassan Gardezi to the Architectural Board of Review.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zatrak?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
And finally, a motion to confirm the appointment of Dr. James Taylor to the Planning Commission. Is there a motion? Apparently not. I want to talk about that for a second. Dr. Taylor has been a member of our Planning Commission for over 30 years. He is served the city with honor and distinction. I would have preferred if council had had the courtesy, if no one thought that they wanted to renominate this fine resident, that someone had communicated that prior to this meeting. Under the charter changes that council is urging, there would be new appointments at the latest at the end of this year. So any of these appointments are going to be for a limited time on the Planning Commission. So I would ask again, is there any motion for this appointment?
Can I ask a question? And I
Yes.
apologize for not bringing this up
Yes.
earlier. I understand that he's served on the planning commission for many years. I'm a little curious, and again, I'm going to apologize for my ignorance here. Is this almost like a formulaic, renomination that you propose, assuming you're comfortable with his service, or is it something that at the end of each member's term, net is cast, because I haven't seen anything go out asking for, new residents to apply. So I'm just kind of
Well,
curious.
that's why this is a reappointment, yes.
Right, so
The
that's,
appoint-
I guess
okay.
that's what I would love to know sort of your thought process. This is your nomination, right? This is your suggestion.
Is my suggestion. No, there's not been an advertisement for new members of the
Okay.
Planning
This
Commission.
is traditional.
This is how we've handled it for many, many years.
Yeah.
As I said, Dr. Taylor has been a wonderful and dedicated member of the commission and to the city of Pepper Pike. He has served in other roles during his tenure. I did not, although I may have a belief
Mhm.
that, and Dr. Taylor, if not asked to serve, will, of course, abide and step down. Given the charter change that council is urging, to bring someone else in and to be let go under the terms of this charter change sometime within this coming year, I didn't think that was an appropriate thing to put on a person. And since it has always been a routine matter to make this reappointment, I think it is very appropriate that for this potentially short-term duration, that Dr. Taylor be reappointed to the commission and to continue to fill this seat. If he is not reappointed, I suppose he will continue to serve until he's replaced. So that's up to council.
I'm comfortable.
I've said what I believe is the honorable thing to do for this gentleman. Council wishes to not so honor this resident who has provided incredible service to the city. That is up to council.
I'm comfortable moving for his confirmation.
I think there's no personal. It's not a personal reference to Dr. Taylor, who I like very much.
Well, it's totally a personal offense to Dr. Taylor. I will tell you that.
It is not intended to be.
Do we have a second to
I don't
Jamie's
think we have a
motion?
second yet. Is there a
I
second?
have a question.
Yes.
Just like in the future, do we have plans to kind of publicize some of the committees to the residents? Because I feel like, if we can plan on things maybe like 6 months in advance to terms ending in the future, I'd be more comfortable with that. Having applications like we did for the Charter Review Commission, making sure that, or is that just not done? Because we don't know which we have a lot of great residents in the city that want to be involved. I mean, we see how many people come to the council meetings and participate. I think it might be nice to see if there might be other residents that want to participate. I don't have a problem or anything with Dr. Taylor or anything like that. But I mean, even for example, on the Road and Infrastructure and Communications Committee, we have the same resident on both. So maybe we could think about that for the future to diversify.
These were council's nominations,
Yeah,
not mine.
I hear
Council's
you.
made it
I
clear
hear you.
it does not want me nominating these people, and I have not nominated these people. If council wanted to advertise for people, council should have advertised for people.
Yeah, so maybe in the future for that.
That's the story.
I
You
mean,
took it out of my hands over the last year or two. This was on council. If you wanted different people, the administration suggested some people here. So it's up to council. Is there a second for this nomination that Ms. Godick made?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Atruk,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Abstain.
Ms. Godin,
Yes.
Mr. Lemay,
Abstain.
Mr. Gentili,
Abstain.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
What does it mean? It's 3 out of 6.
You need 4 votes.
We would need 4 votes.
Can we make it for the next meeting when Scott's here?
Hmm?
Maybe we can do it at the next meeting when Scott's here?
You could.
For now, he is going to, if anyone wants to change their vote before we close the vote, I will permit that as the chair.
I'll change my vote to yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gentili.
Not to delay this until 2 weeks from now.
I have the other agenda. I need the new agenda.
We are on to ordinance, I have the wrong one too, Mayor. We are on to ordinance. Ordinance 2025-01. Yeah, mine does not have 2025-01, but it is on second reading.
Right.
The revised agenda
Is that the charter?
on 110 had that.
Just let me
Yeah.
physically look at
Here.
it for a second.
It's, we have
I
the
know,
same.
I just want to see.
I did not print the revised for you.
Thank you. We now move on to the second reading of
Ordinance.
ordinance 2025-01. Is there any further discussion by council of this ordinance this evening?
I usually introduce this topic, the Charter Review Commission, and this is the continuation of their work. Mr. Lemay has asked to introduce it tonight, and I've said that that's great. I don't really have the power to not let him do that, but I thought it would be great. And I would like to have some comments after he speaks.
Yeah.
You must be called on, Mr. Lemay. You're called on.
Yes, I was called on. I want to talk a little bit in response to some of the comments that were made last week and a little bit more context on why the Charter Reform Commission is suggesting these reforms and why they're important. So in my view, there's kind of 2 large buckets that underlie them. One is making the city government function better on a day-to-day basis, and also about strengthening the guardrails to protect the city under circumstances in the future. The Reform Commission isn't about something being broken in the city. There's nothing broken in the city. We are a high-functioning city. Things are going well in Pepper Pike. And it's not about any other elected or public official either. It's really about a commitment to making the city better. I would agree that we are a high-functioning city and things are going well. But it's also true that we haven't received or achieved a municipal government nirvana here in Pepper Pike. We don't have the perfect city government. And really, the Charter Reform Committee isn't about fixing what is broken, but it's a commitment to continuous improvement. Even when things are going well, great organizations in and out of government should always be looking for ways to make things better, in small ways or big ways. I take you back to some of the older residents here would know, or longtime residents, I should say, 2010 when Pepper Pike had its own financial crisis. If you ask someone, a public official at the time, was anything broken in Pepper Pike before the financial crisis? I can assure you that none of us here were sitting there then, but government officials would have said no. And suddenly we were out of money, laying off police officers, making other drastic decisions. At the time, it was really a sense of complacency and a failure of imagination about what might go wrong. So these charter review and forum, it's not about fixing what's broken. It's making government work better day to day and providing, looking forward, what could go wrong in the future and providing some more guardrails to protect us. We should never make changes to our charter for the sake of change, and we should also make them with great caution. Because things are going well in Pepper Pike, any change we make to the charter, we should have a high confidence that it's going to make things better, that it's going to improve city government, even though something isn't broken, so to speak. In addition to improving the day-to-day function of city government, I think these reforms protect the city, enhance the separation of powers, which are the guardrails that protect government. For the last 40 years, we've been very fortunate to only have 2 mayors and 2 excellent mayors who were dedicated public service. I'm talking about Mayor Akers and Mayor Bain. They are dedicated public services who have always acted with the best interests of the city in mind and have achieved good things for the city, even great things. And we're lucky to have had them, and we're lucky to still have a mayor here. But we have to anticipate also that there may become a time when we have a mayor who is not so transparent, not so communicative, not so collaborative, not so qualified as Mayor Bain is, and might even have some autocratic tendencies. This has happened elsewhere. And I want to know, are we prepared for that in terms of our structure of government and the checks and balances and the separation of powers? And I think that's another theme that comes through on the reform. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the key reforms and why I think it will improve city government and also protect city government going forward. First, on the president of council. One of the key reforms, and one we've gotten a lot of comments on from the audience last time and in general. Pepper Pike has an unusual structure of government in that we have the executive branch presiding over the legislative branch on the meetings. I say it's unusual because that is not the norm, either at the federal level or the state level or most local levels. At the federal level, of course, the president doesn't preside over the House of Representatives. State of Ohio, the governor doesn't preside over the House of Representatives. And for most city councils, it's the council president who presides over city council meetings. About 80% of the communities in Cuyahoga County have a president of council, and the president of council presides over council meetings. And there's important reasons for this. The power to preside is an important power. It sets the agenda for the meeting. It navigates, controls the discussion of the meeting, rules on motions in the meeting, can cancel or adjourn meetings. And those are important powers. The legislative body has 2 key functions I see for us. One is making policy for the city and making laws that follow that policy. And to do that, the legislature is not just one person, but it's many persons at all levels of government to reflect the diverse interests of the community. And making policy and making legislation should be entirely independent of the executive branch. The other important function of the legislature's council is oversight. Oversight over the executive. That's at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. Council, for example, has the Finance Committee and the Road and Infrastructure Committee, and a big part of their job is oversight. But again, if the executive is in control and presiding over the legislature, there's a risk that that oversight function could be compromised. Again, that's not consistent with the separation of powers and consistent with how most governments are structured, both at the federal, state, and at the local level. So in terms of the president of council, what the commission is suggesting is not out of the norm, it is the norm to have a president of council presiding over those meetings. And I think just there's important benefits to having that, the president of council that office existing and that office presiding over meetings of council, it will both improve the functioning of government and strengthen the guardrails of government. First, it's going to improve the communication. I talked a little bit before last week. The president of council would have control of the agenda for the meetings, but the mayor is still the CEO of the city. And none of these reforms affect his chief executive powers. And in fact, if you look at the charter, the revised charter, his executive authority is better defined and broader defined in some cases. If you look at the section that covers it, it's very clear. In the last chart, it was very unclear exactly what the executive authority is. So none of those reforms affect that. But they do, if you recall, last week I talked about my long conversation with former mayor of Moreland Hills, Susan Renda. She was, I think, 3-term, very successful mayor. But she was the mayor, and Moreland Hills, like most cities, has a president of council. And the mayor will still be proposing almost all of the legislation that comes before council. That's the way it is today because he's running the city. And he knows what the city needs in terms of legislation. Once in a while, council will propose something, but mostly from the mayor. So Susan Renda, the former mayor, Moreland Hills, says how it worked in there, she as mayor would propose something. But since they have a president of council, the proposal would start with a conversation with the president of council. Or she would go to the president of council and say, I want to propose this law or this ordinance or this proposal or this capital project. And that would cause a discussion between the president of council and her. She found those discussions to be absolutely invaluable. The president of council, if they're doing their job, should have a sense of council. And the president of council in the Moreland Hills case would tell Susan, well, I think that won't pass because these 2 members of council are opposed to this. But if you change it to look like this, I think you'll get their votes. Or the president of council would tell Susan that, I don't think that's going to pass unless you add these things to it. Or I would further cook on that proposal. Every president of council she had, and she had several presidents of council, and some were better than others, she said, but all of them having that conversation before an initiative was introduced made that legislation better. And it made the meetings run better. Because she, as mayor, before introducing, had a preview of what new action might be by members of council. And in some cases, she adjusted the legislation to reflect that. So the conversation was better at the council meeting, and more got done, and the governance of the city just ran better. And for her, that was a key benefit of having a president of council, that structural communication, that between her and the president of council before initiatives were introduced. The other benefits of the president of council I mentioned last week is having an additional resource for citizens to speak to and for employees to speak to, and also having a voice of council as the independent legislative body. So that's a leadership position for that. So with all those things, with all those, having a president of council will strengthen our guardrails because it will keep the legislature independent of the executive. So the council, led by the president, performing its policymaking and its oversight functions, can be independent of the executive, which is what it should be. It provides structural built-in communication between the mayor and the president of council to help with legislation. And it provides those resources for citizens and as well as employees and staff members to communicate. So for me, all those benefits of the president of council all those benefits pass the test. In other words, I think those benefits are very strong. I think there's a high certainty that those benefits will be delivered. And we see this because, as I mentioned, 80% of the communities have a president of council, have adopted that method of government, and have kept with it. And so I think that passes the test, and that's why I support having a president of council. Now, I have some comments on some other provisions, but I want to pause for a moment and let other members of council weigh in on, or the mayor and the mayor weigh in on what I just said on that one provision.
Council?
Very well said.
I'm going to keep my comments to my written comments, but I fully agree with what Mr. LeMay said. Some of what I'm going to say is going to repeat what he said, not exactly in the same way and not in the same words, but for sure, a new charter, if it's adopted, has the mayor as the CEO, and his duties have not changed as is laid out in Article 4, 5. And the mayor, as Mr. Lemay has said, will continue to run things under the new system if we adopt it.
Anyone else? Kathy? Are you saying something?
I'd like to hear your thoughts, Mayor.
I'm gonna hold my comments for now. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Lemay?
I'm going to comment on one other fundamental change, that is the planning commission changes that are in the charter, that are in the proposed charter. Some of the key functions of the planning commission is to, as an advisory body, review potential changes to the zoning code, and also consider variances to the zoning code, and also consider appeals of citizens of zoning code violation fines that have been imposed on the administration. I'd like to talk briefly about each of those and how I think those will be better administered under the reformed charter provisions. First of all, the changes to the zoning code I consider as a policy function, more like a legislative function. A policy function is what should the zoning code be, rather than an administrative function. Variances, you could argue, are administrative function, but in the first instance, it's a policy function. The policy function on the variance front is deciding should variances be liberally granted or very limited granted. Should it be highly flexible or strictly construed? That's a key policy. Some cities grant variances very easily and very broadly. Some are very strict about it. So because that's, in the first instance, a policy function, I think that's more like a legislative function than an administrative function. And finally, the last is appeal. If the building commissioner or the building inspector would impose a fine on someone, one of our citizens, for a violation of the zoning code, our ordinances provide that they can appeal that imposition of fine to the planning commission. But bearing in mind that the fine is imposed by the administration, but yet a member of the administration sits on the planning commission. So there's a clear conflict of interest there when you're trying to appeal to, in part, a body that has a member of the administration who imposed the very fine that's being appealed. The planning commission's purpose is to really represent the community at large. Idea of having citizen members is to get a broad skill set in there: architects, real estate experts, and so forth. So you want experts on there to help advise the city on zoning and planning matters. Also, the important idea behind having citizens on the committee is to keep it independent of politics. The goal is to have planning commission decisions be evidence-based, based on what's best interest of the city, rather than some political push left or right from someone. So having a minimum of elected officials on the planning commission is seen as best practice for that. And in fact, when the Charter Commission was thinking about putting 2 council members on the planning commission, our law director strongly advised against that and said you should have more citizen members and less elected officials to maintain the independence of the committee, independence from the council and independence from the city. Their decisions, therefore, would have more sustainability at the court if they're independent. So if it's a best practice to only have one elected official or one official, public official on it, what's the best interest of whether a council member or having the mayor on it? And for the reasons I indicated, I come out that it's better to have a council member on it rather than the mayor, because again, the zoning changes are a policy making function. The variance changes in the first instance in deciding how broad or narrow they will be is a policy making function. And third, because there's a conflict of interest between having an administration member sit on a committee when there's appeals being taken to it that were imposed by the administration. That's just a conflict of interest. So for all those reasons, I approve of the reform being generated, and also the fact that it's going to be a single council member on the committee that allows room for more expert citizen participation and minimizes the political, but potential political pushback, having only one council member on the committee. So those are my reasons, having thought about it at some length and listened to and attended all the commission meetings. Well, I think this reform also will make our government work better and be more independent.
Any councilman have any comments regarding these comments, Mr. Lemay, or that section of the charter?
I do not, but I'd like to be recognized to speak.
Go ahead.
I want to respond to some of the audience participation of the last meeting. I said at that time that there was a rebuttal and discussion of the audience comments was not part of what we did, but it is. I do have the freedom to do that now, and I wanted to address some of those audience participation comments and questions. So during the audience participation portion of last week's special council meeting, members of the audience made assertions related to the Charter Review Commission's report and processes and asked questions. Mr. Kennedy asked for a one-page summary of pros and cons. The Charter Review Commission provided a two-page executive summary of their report, which can be found on the Pepper Pike website. It's not one page, but it's 2 pages. The commission has completed its work and really should not be asked to do more. Susan Tapp made several assertions, and without reiterating all of them and rebutting each one, I will attempt to address her concerns. Her primary objection is that the recommended changes remove authority from the mayor. I disagree. The recommended changes, in fact, do, in addition to modernizing language, removing unconstitutional provisions, and bolstering the required qualifications for elected officials, enhance the ability of the city council to provide the checks and balances that are inherent in all levels of the governments in the United States. The mayor expressly retains powers of the CEO, as Article 4-5 enumerates executive powers of the mayor, saying the mayor shall be the chief executive officer. Those are the words. No powers that exist in the current 1966 charter have been removed. Wording changes recommended by the law director updated the mayor's hiring and firing authority to reflect current civil service laws and union contracts. Under the proposed charter, the mayor continues to run things. With respect to presiding at council meetings, in a commission meeting, there was a lengthy discussion regarding what it means to preside at a council meeting. The law director stated that presiding is the function of a president. To the extent that the mayor was called upon to preside at council meetings in the 1966 charter, Pepper Pike has always had a president of council. Vesting the position of the president of council in a member of council sharpens the line between the legislative and executive branches of the government. It's a misreading of the commission report to say that the mayor is allowed to attend council meetings. The language in Article 4-3 is that the mayor shall attend council meetings and provide oral and written reports. It is not a stretch to expect that the mayor will continue to have a very important and prominent role in future council meetings. His voice will be far from minimized. She recommended reopening the commission. Doing so would be impossible. The commission completed its assignment and no longer exists as an entity. I repeat my request for anyone who doubts any aspect of the commission's work to read the minutes of the 17 meetings posted at the website. And I believe, I'm not sure if it's on the website yet, but the secretary of the commission, on his own power and under his own initiative, has published a 94-page compendium of the minutes and is preparing an index so that you can look up the topics that were discussed in the minutes page by page. So he's making it very easy, and I commend him, Howard Bachneck, for doing that. Claiming that the matter is already decided is just not true. Tonight, council is considering the election ordinance for a second reading. I have called for a third reading at a special council meeting a week from tomorrow. She claims that it would be difficult to attract candidates for the law director and treasurer positions. This ignores the facts. With only a 2-year appointment, our current law director and treasurer have been in their positions for 13 and 11 years, respectively. Maybe give or take 6 months or so. The length of the appointment does not give job security. Performance does. There should be an explicit provision that these two officials can be removed rather than just serving at the pleasure of the mayor. A supermajority of members of council voting in favor of removal presents a high bar, unlikely to be abused, for the removal of either of these officials. Ms. Taft used the phrase "all at once" several times in her presentation. With due respect, there is nothing all at once about this. It has now been 58 years since the charter was fully examined. The Charter Review Commission spent hundreds of hours working on their recommendations and their report. That's hardly all at once. Removal of any elected official by the council requires a supermajority, not 3, of the members to vote in favor after a serious breach of standards has been noted, and notice and due process. Well-run for-profit, not-for-profit, and government entities, including many nearby communities, allow a governing body to remove its CEO. None of them, for reasons which should be obvious, allow a CEO to remove a board member, a trustee, or a council member. In reply to Mr. Rice, consider the following. Recognizing that he has wonderful credentials to run for office in Pepper Pike, he might be a terrific council member. Not everyone who has lived in Pepper Pike as briefly as he has will have that same background. Rather than reduce the residency requirement recommended by the commission for a council member, the better course of action is to delay having a person of his caliber on council for a short while rather than to take a chance on a much lesser candidate. Mr. Bartasavich has said many times at council meetings and on social media that the Charter Review Initiative is a personality conflict between members of the council and the mayor. He has related this claim to sidewalks. He said this again last Tuesday. This is simply not the case. The Charter Review Commission was constituted to ensure that Pepper Pike follows current best practices for a responsive, transparent, and effective local government. Pepper Pike has been blessed with mayors, including Rick Bain, who have by many measures done an excellent job. The Charter Review is based on system improvement and installing guardrails to prevent a lesser or renegade mayor from damaging the city. It is not about Rick Bain or any other individual. Something doesn't need to be broken to be improved. If you are not improving, you are falling behind. And 58 years without a comprehensive review is far too long. He states that members of council did not respond to a survey that he sent us. He sent the results of a survey to us on May 21st, 2024. The question he told us he asked those who he surveyed was, what would you like to see added to Pepper Pike? The answers ran the gamut from a coffee shop and benches to a community pool and a community center. It's no surprise that no one identified a new city charter in the survey because that wasn't the question asked. In his email, he asked the mayor and members of council to consider taking a look at the residents' opinions. He did not ask us in this email to respond to him, and he now indicates that we have been remiss for not doing so. The branch of government that should address the survey wish list is the executive branch, and it did so in the 5-year capital projects budget it proposed in December, which council approved. The approved CPB contained several items suggested by the social media group in the amount of nearly $4.2 million. Yes, the council, which Mr. Bartasavich likes to denigrate, unanimously approved the CPB as it has all walkability ordinances presented to us. He asked members of council to state what issues they have regarding communication. I will state my primary concern. The quantity of written reports has decreased over the years, and the content of some of them has changed, making them less useful to members of council and the public. My statement is not indicative of a personality contact, but rather a wish for more and better information so that I, as a council member, can do the job in the best way possible for the residents of Pepper Pike. I understand that by replying to Mr. Bartasavage, I'm taking a risk. His use of social media makes my reply akin to picking a fight with people who buy ink by the barrel. I'm sure he will have some comments that I will not be able to answer on Facebook.
Anyone else? Mr. Lemay, did you have more? Or Mr. Gentili kind of jumped in there. I don't know if you were.
That's enough. I'm good.
Okay. Is there any other discussion by council of the charter this evening? Dr. Wong.
Just to be thorough, I mean, I think the Charter Review Commission did an excellent job. But should we go article by article of the changes that they have, or is that too long? I mean,
Yeah, I don't, if you have a comment on some article, great, but I think, in my view, the narrative,
yeah,
it describes it very well, and
Yeah.
it can incumbent on the council members to read it. But you have a question on something, I think we're all happy to discuss it.
I agree. We opened the discussion last week, and members of council, I know you couldn't be here because you were ill, voiced their objections or their opinions and issues that they had with it. And I think that that's the better way to go. It would be very tedious, I think,
Right.
to go through it provision by provision. And as the commission member said, the report speaks for itself.
Oh.
And I agree with that.
Can I ask about a couple sections?
Sure,
then?
sure.
Yeah.
You weren't here last week,
Yeah.
so this is your chance.
So section 3.9 removal, and 4.8. So 3.9 is the removal of a council member by council, and 4.8 is removal of mayor by council, which I read through all of the Charter Review Commission's minutes. And so I understand where this is coming from because it is in adjacent charters, adjacent community charters, and missing from ours. And, but I was just wondering, maybe Steve can answer to this. Are there any kind of case laws that have come up that kind of go over what kind of egregious things that these members could do that would initiate?
Council would have significant discretion to determine, I mean, many charters have
Mhm.
specific misfeasance, malfeasance,
Right.
nonfeasance,
Right.
and there's,
I mean, I don't even know what malfeasance means.
yeah. well,
really.
they're the feasance sisters that travel together.
Right. But I mean, like,
Misfeasance is a mistake, malfeasance is bad conduct, and nonfeasance is failure to act. So it's all types of
Okay.
actions. And there is case law that defines all that.
Mhm.
I don't think we use those terms. I can't remember precisely what terms we use.
Yes, right here. In Ed.
Mhm.
Misconduct or malfeasance,
Yeah.
misfeasance.
There you go. So we do use that. Gross misconduct or malfeasance. You'd have to identify specific
right.
activities that would warrant removal.
Okay. Do we have any like ideas of what that would be or?
In my mind, Kat, and I understand I mean, it's a serious business,
Yeah.
but I think the parallel that is in most governments, including the federal government, is the notion of impeachment.
Right, right. Impeachment.
That's the parallel. And I
Right.
think the policy under that is since the mayor is the chief executive officer or the president, the chief,
Right.
or the governor,
Right.
they have control over writing the checks, and
Right.
governing the employees, and
Right.
compliance with law. And since they're running the enterprise, if they're doing something wrong, or doing it really badly, the damage they can do to the city in a very short period of time is profound. And that's at the federal level, the state level. So the theory behind, in my view, behind impeachment, and this is like removal, we're calling it
Right, right.
removal, but it's like an impeachment clause, is that if you had to wait for the next election,
Right.
the city could be grievously harmed.
Right.
In my view, I think this will be rarely, never used, but like I mentioned before about strengthening the guardrails, if in the future we don't have the quality of mayor we've had and someone who is autocratic or playing close to the line legally, we need to have the right to take action quickly to stop the damage from occurring. And it's a profound responsibility, and I would never take it lightly. But if there's that kind of conduct going on that's harming the city, we need to have that right. Most cities have adopted this, and of course, it's built in at the federal and state level and
Right.
in those constitutions through the power of impeachment. So that's the parallel I would have. I'm comfortable for that because it is a very common provision to protect the city. It's another guardrail.
I agree that there should be like council initiated sort of review of people, but ultimately it makes me a little bit uncomfortable that it doesn't finally go to the residents. Like in the recall provision,
And-
that if they don't resign after 5 days, then it goes to a vote by the people. So then
But-
why wouldn't this one?
The issue with that, and this is why as I understand why most cities have adopted a parallel provision, is it takes months.
But you could impeach them and make them kind of like a lame duck and not let them have a vote until that
Yeah.
point in
Well,
time until
this,
the
this,
residents can
this,
have
this
a vote.
power with the due process and with the procedure is very serious, but I think it builds in the safeguards to make sure it's not done lightly.
Right.
But there could be an urgency
Mhm.
where it's ongoing active harm, like if there's not complying with
Right,
law.
right,
Right?
right.
And there's potential fines and penalties building up. You just can't wait. It's an extreme case, but you just can't wait.
If you can't remove them immediately from doing harm, and as I use the word renegade, I really meant renegade. You don't know every mayor that we might get for the next 40 years or even the next 10 years. They can do irreparable harm, and they need to be removed from their duties immediately. And to only use the recall is a process that takes, as Mr. LeMay said, months and months. And they're just,
Could
it's
we
probably-
call it
it's probably-
impeachment then? I mean,
well, it's not impeachment. Impeachment is an accusation. The removal is done by the Senate. So that analogy isn't perfect.
okay.
But
I
the-
mean,
and so-
I
and we don't-
understand what the whole
and we-
concept
and we don't
is
wanna
to
just-
safeguard the city. It just,
We don't want to just accuse that renegade individual of something. We want to stop them from acting on behalf of the city.
And just to clarify, I think we're only talking about A because the other ones are very tangible, conviction while in office.
Right.
For crime involving moral turpitude.
Well, I'll speak up to this.
So, well,
Oh,
I
I'm sorry,
can
you're
just
still
finish,
talking. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Or disqualification for office would mean like you moved. So obviously
Right.
those are all, everything B, C, D, E, I think are all very obvious. Adjudicated legally incompetent. I mean, these are very obvious ones. So I think we're only talking about A. And I guess I thought about what you said also. I sat in on the meetings and I also reread because I needed to reread this provision because this isn't something that I had really thought about before. But I think when the Charter Review Commission was comparing, it stood out to them
that was,
as something that was omitted from our charter that they saw in every other charter and that they were familiar with. And as I think both of you said, both Tony and Jim referenced, as a standard part of American government, an expectation. And so I think I'm comfortable with it also because the standard is so high. And the application, as we see in other communities, is so extremely rare. And I think that, we have to note that it says gross misconduct or malfeasance, misfeasance, or nonfeasance in office. So that's why, and just because I think they took it very seriously that this was somehow a provision that we were lacking.
Yeah, I was reviewing the minutes from the review committee,
Mhm.
and on page 31, it said that I think maybe Miss Jarrett might have proposed it and looked at all of the surrounding communities and said that Moreland Hills had a provision with respect to council members, but not the mayor, but a lot of other surrounding communities had this, and that she felt strongly we should add something because, you know, of the dire consequences if they're left unchecked. But I just, when I initially read it, I was like, what is this? And only 5 of members of council, why not 6, minus that person, or like everybody unanimous minus that person, or why
Are those threshold numbers sort of standard?
Yeah, 5 is what?
5, 3/4,
Yeah.
3/4 of the
Right.
council.
That's the
And
standard
I read that
supermajority, yeah.
too, but
I think that's why they came up with that number, whether you don't, whether one doesn't like it or not, but I think that's how
Yeah.
they chose that number.
Tony is actually correct. When he made the point that the House convicts and the Senate believes. That is why it is not a true analogy of local government to the federal government,
right.
much as a lot of the aspects that are being drawn upon for a local city government. We're a small community.
Okay.
It's not analogous to the massive federal government. And the safeguard, the protection that the federal government has is that those who convict are not those who remove.
Right. Right.
That's a big difference. Just a comment.
No, I understand. Okay. I'm okay with it. But
Remember, council is building a charter for the ages,
right.
not for a particular mayor,
No, I know.
not for a particular point in time. And that weighs heavy on me as I look at this and consider these suggestions. And I view them as suggestions by the Charter Commission.
Yeah, I think we should view it that way, We were the elected city officials and we asked for resident input, and they put so much time and energy into this. That, it's amazing reading through all the minutes and the report. They spent so much time on it, and I really appreciate their time. So, I know we already touched on this before, but I'm just thinking about the residency requirements. I think it's important for the residents to know our city, and I know that the one particular resident that's spoken up before about his time here. Everybody okay with the 2 years, 4 years sort of thing? Okay.
You seem not.
I was reading through all the minutes, and there's a long discussion between the committee members upon how many years. Personally, I don't think it really matters. I think it's up to the voters to try to figure things out, but it is important for somebody who's running to know the community very well rather than change it into a different community where they're coming from. So I think a residence requirement is needed. I just don't know what the perfect number is. I lived in LA and I'm coming here, and if after a year I was wanting to run, I think that would be
Well,
Not
that's
good,
that, and that is
you
the current, the state requirement is
Yeah.
1 year.
so. But I feel for those that have been here for a short time and they want to get involved. But I also see the other side where you need to know the community better to get a feel for it rather than trying to change it and, just to get a feel for it.
But is,
The other thing that's important to me about that is that it not only lets, and we're going to have different people who think they're qualified for
Right,
different, right? And there's lots of opportunities to get involved.
Right.
on council committees,
Mhm.
on Centennial Committee. I mean, there's dozens of places to volunteer. And that not only helps you get to know the city, but it helps the city get to know you.
Mhm.
So you can interact with citizens involved. And so you convey a sense to those. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Understanding. And there's so many chances to get involved in various ways to volunteer. I would hope everyone would want to serve on one of those boards or committees as a stepping stone to getting involved in running for office. So I think 2 years is reasonable for that.
Yeah.
I wanted to just make a quick comment about the mayor's comment. He suggested, he said that these were suggestions, and I think that lessens the import of what they are. They're recommendations, which to me is a more serious endorsement than a mere suggestion. And I believe that the members of that commission felt that they were doing recommendations. That's what they talked about from start to finish. And I think that a recommendation, as I said, is a higher level of endorsement than a mere suggestion.
I would agree with that, and I think that the amount of time and deliberation and research that they put into every single recommendation was significant. And they circled back on these conversations, and they put a lot of time into looking into what other communities had and why, and talking to the law director about concerns that might have arisen in their conversations. I mean, it was really tremendously thorough and diligent and thoughtful and researched. And not one issue was just a quick conversation and a decision. Everything was circled back to and reviewed repeatedly. So I agree that there's a lot of seriousness to what the work they did and a lot of effort behind it.
And I think circling back to the residency requirement, I don't think that 2 years is a very high threshold, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean,
And I know in the discussion of the commission, there were some members who wanted it to be even longer, both for council and mayor. I think that longer than a 1 year for the state. I think 2 years is a minimum. And quite frankly, there's a council election really every 2 years. It's like if somebody wants to get involved, as Steve said about election, there's another one coming just down the pike. That opportunity is there. And I think that growing and learning as a resident about the community and bringing those qualifications in, it's only going to make you a better servant of the community if you were to get elected. So I'm supportive of that, of a minimum of 2 years and 4 years for mayor.
And that's a good point. This is on the lower end, although there were a number that had 2, but there were also, I believe, 4 and 5 in some other communities, surrounding communities.
Yeah.
So for these same positions of being on council, one of them had 5.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is
it's everywhere.
such a high bar.
I had one more question.
Does it say in there?
Article 11A,
5
the
years
Charter
behind
Review Commission. It just said kind of like the requirements, it's at least 3 years for the charter review to be on that commission.
That was what we had when everybody
No, I know,
voted this time.
that's fine. And then it says they shall not hold any other elected or appointed public office of the city. That means just the city of Pepper
This city,
Pike, right?
this city,
Okay,
right.
okay.
And that was something that was suggested and insisted upon really by Mr. Newell and Ms. Godick and the mayor. No one who had any other
Okay.
job within the city could be a voting member of
Right.
the commission.
School board's not the city, that's
So,
Orange.
no,
It's a
that's a
community,
separate
yeah.
entity.
Got it.
Until you just said that, I did not really have it sink in. You can be, under this proposal, you can be a council person
In another-
before you could be on the charter
Yeah.
commission.
That was like I was like,
It's sort of the situation that Ms. Godick faced in the initial proposal for this charter commission,
Mhm.
when she would not have qualified to be on the charter commission for which she was voting as a council person. That's an interesting
You know,
circumstance.
it's just like 3 and 2. It's like, you know, that's just why I brought it up.
I'd be comfortable making it more.
It's fine.
Bring it up
Let's
if
make
you'd
it
like to
three
make
for
it more.
I'm,
You should.
no, I'm happy with that threshold. I'm okay with
I
that.
came up with a number and I
Yeah,
think
I think it
it's
fits.
fine.
There's one more point that I forgot to bring up. Article 12, 1, the effective date of the charter. I think they kind of left it blank. Are we going to?
I think
Address-
that
Jim touched on that for the legislation
Yeah,
piece.
we need to talk about that. I think maybe we can do that at the next meeting, but
Okay.
the theory is that there needs to be some implementing ordinances before we would have the effective date of this. And I was gonna myself get my head around how many there are and how big a project that is.
Okay.
I'm suspecting it's a couple months' work at least. So we need to think about that. I'll think about that at some length for the next meeting and make a suggestion.
Steve, do you have a clear idea of what we would need to pass if this passed?
Well,
Or did that-
no, but I think there, that you have a number of things that are happening in terms of, you'll be replacing the entire planning commission. And it would make sense to do that at your, January meeting. That's why initially I thought starting January in 2026 would be the logical place to start.
Yeah.
And just, start with a clean slate in that year. One other thing I want to say, it didn't come up at the Charter Review Commission. I might not have been there for the meeting. There is a remedy. Let's imagine that somebody goes crazy in the mayor's office. And I'm not saying Mayor Bain, I'm saying somebody. There is a procedure under state law where you file a complaint in common pleas court alleging the things that are going wrong. That's probably a adequate procedure from a legal standpoint, where you have an independent body making a determination of the competency of the individual. And that the judge would have the ability to issue a TRO right from the go, which would be far superior to the process of wrangling that council would have to go through. Just so you're aware, from an effective protection of the city standpoint, that would be the remedy that I'd be looking to utilize.
A short-term, immediate thing if we needed.
Boom.
Yeah.
You go to court with the complaint, TRO, get the mayor out of the office.
Mhm.
And you could have a special council meeting where the law director is directed to do that by council. That could happen. And it takes the pressure off of a council to have a vote to move another elected official. You often see council removing one of their own members. That is a very common provision. It's far less common to have a council procedure to remove a mayor,
So-
although it does exist.
Is that distinct from D, having been adjudicated legally incompetent?
It is.
It's a different,
Yeah.
because it's a different,
Yeah, adjudicated legally incompetent is a probate proceeding.
so you're saying that, okay, versus
Right.
this.
The procedure that state law contemplates in section 3.08 of the Ohio Revised Code, you can go to court with, I think it's a complaint of 15 members, 15 residents of the community. And that would be the remedy that would ordinarily be available.
Kathy, do you have anything else?
I don't think so. Somebody else can ask a question. Oh, I look, make sure. I don't think I do. We can move on.
Anything else, Fran? Are you done, Dr. Watt?
Yeah. Yes.
Council, any other comments tonight? Well, like I said earlier, I will withhold most of my comments regarding this. I prefer to focus on Mr. LeMay's opening comment. Nothing is broken in the city. And I agree. This government is not broken. I do not support this charter change. I think it is well beyond the pale of, again, what Mr. Lemay himself said at the town hall meeting when running for reelection, which was that he would support charter changes on an incremental basis when when something is identified as being broken. We are not broken. And I think that this is a problematic program for the city to launch into personally. And yeah, they're just comments like the Planning Commission. Planning Commission and the granting of variances, just so that our residents are aware, is in no way a zero-sum game, that you either have a liberally granted variance program or a very strict variance program. That's not understanding how variances work. Variances are fact-specific to every single application that occurs, or it should be fact-specific to every application to occur. That is why they are not, by definition, almost precedent for any other variance that comes along, because they are always fact-specific. It may reflect, and this may be what Mr. Lemay was getting at, it may reflect that there are different views of what variances are seeking to accomplish. I believe that zoning, the very idea that the word variance and its availability exists, suggests that there will be circumstances where you go outside of the printed ordinance or zoning requirement as to how you handle something, what a resident is permitted to do. That's why they exist. It's not a lay down, just because someone comes in, they get to do it. The examination that has to be taken is what is the goal? Just like, is something broken in the city before you do a charter commission or a charter revision? Same with the variance. What is the goal of the statute to begin with? And is the variant one, is it just one of those circumstances where, it doesn't violate the goal of the zoning ordinance, the zoning chapter, to accomplish what you want? That's well beyond our conversation here. And that's something I think council should have a conversation about in the future. But right now we're focused, and I did allow myself to become distracted by that, and I apologize. All I'm suggesting is that the Planning Commission does not engage, nor should it, in a zero-sum game of being liberal in its attitude or restrictive in its attitude. I don't think that's appropriate, and I don't think our residents should anticipate it would be that way.
I'm not sure what you mean by a zero-sum game in this.
That
in this
either
instance.
all applications are going to be viewed liberally, that, someone wants it, it's theirs, which was how I took the conversation, what was being said. Or there's some extraordinary bar to be overcome before a variance can be granted. That is not how you deal with them either. They're fact specific. You have to look at what is the goal of the zoning? How does this factual situation play into that? And
Yeah,
can it be
I
achieved?
understand that. I just didn't
That's
understand.
what I'm saying.
I didn't understand the context of the zero-sum game. I think that's.
One or the other, liberal or very strict.
Yeah,
That's what I was
I
saying.
understand one or the other.
Okay, one or the other. That's all. I just want to basically make that observation. All right, if we are done with the charter for this evening, we can move on to the committees and department heads. Since we met 1 week ago, we have had no committee meetings, so I believe there are none to report. So far as the department heads, Mr. Advent, your guys have been doing a great job getting the snow up. It's been a tough week. And they've done
And a lot of snow. A lot of overtime last pay, which means they were out a lot, putting down a lot of salt.
How's the salt supply going?
We're gonna order, we just put in an order for 500 tons, which is the beginning of our allotment for the year. So we're in good shape. There's quite a bit still in the bin, but you never want to run out, so.
So far as I know we ended up last season with a significant surplus of salt.
Mhm.
And you were telling me earlier last week, I think, that we're through that surplus and well into
Yeah.
standard order. Is this typically, did we have to lay it down more so at the beginning of the season? Or are we at that point of time where we would typically be ordering more salt?
Yeah, we haven't ordered in the short part of the season, which would be November, December, for maybe 3 years, and we continue to do that. But we also had a 300-ton surplus that
Right.
300 tons that we usually don't carry over, which was outside of the barn. So we use that first. But yeah, we probably would have just been ordering around the same time. So
Yeah.
we're back to what it was maybe 3 years ago. Last year was an extremely low year,
Right.
and the year before that was relatively low. So we're probably back to, hopefully it'll slow down a little bit and give everything the chance to catch up. It's doing a lot of damage to the roads.
But
So
Mount Pepper Pike, back then.
Yeah, that's gone.
That's gone.
that's gone. Yeah, we're inside the bin.
I hope the kids had fun sledding on it.
Yeah, it was a salty mess.
All right, good. Thank you. Anything else? Trucks are holding up all right? Can you report?
Mechanically, we're doing great.
Great, good job. Mr. Engineer, anything?
I have nothing to add.
Could we get an update on the water main break at Fairmount? I don't know that we
Sure.
got anything.
That
there.
was a significant break. It was an 8-inch line,
Yeah.
which is basically
So it's pretty big.
virtually their largest water line.
Mhm.
And it undermined a lot of the street.
Oh,
The water, Cleveland Water was marvelous in responding. They had that shut down the same day,
Pretty much, yeah, same.
pretty much, and spliced in and repaired. The street took longer,
okay.
obviously. In fact, even the early estimates that you ended up because of the weather primarily.
Probably about a week later than
Yeah.
we had
Later than you-
anticipated.
It was-
Is it reopened?
It's been, yeah, it opened up, yesterday.
Oh, okay, okay.
9 o'clock.
I haven't gone that way. Just,
Yeah, we opened it at 9.
9 o'clock yesterday.
oh, it's
The
real.
challenge for
That's
us
wonderful news.
was the temperature was the problem. It was so cold
Sure.
that even a concrete pour would not be, couldn't even get concrete delivered. We just had a brief period where everything kind of conspired to give us a cold temp right when the break occurred. So
Thank you.
they got
Thank you.
it.
I communicated with a couple of residents on the street, tried to give them updates regarding what was going on in front of their houses, what they should anticipate. And they were very courteous and generous in understanding that this happens.
It does.
from time to time.
It does, unfortunately.
So, anyway, Chiefs, anything? Okay. We will turn then to, I don't have any comments other than what I just said. Audience, anything?
I have a
Council.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I have a
Council.
question I'd like to raise. There's been some requests for clearing the new walkways during winter, and I know initially we had said that that wasn't something we were going to do, but I kind of thinking, well, that was after last winter, and given the enormous response to the installation of all the pads, and people don't want to walk their dogs or run in the streets, especially in weather like this. I'm curious, Jim, what your take is on if that, what that would involve from the city's perspective.
We currently do not have snow clearing equipment for a lane that narrow.
Right. So you
So
have to
it
buy
would
the
be,
equipment?
it would be purchasing equipment, and then you would just have to fit it into the normal aspect of the snowstorm.
Okay, and I
In
think,
which we would never clear a sidewalk in the middle of a snowstorm.
right,
It
this would
doesn't
be,
make sense.
I would,
It would be
I would
post,
imagine after the fact, roads are good,
Yeah.
okay, now do the walkways.
yeah, you would do that, yeah.
And I know, seems like most neighboring communities do clear this, so this isn't something that's out of the realm of possibility. This is something
No,
that
no,
you
I
guys
mean,
could potentially take on.
There's always been a thought in my mind that eventually, somewhere down the road, it's gonna be asked. So
Yeah.
we're always constantly looking at it, you
Okay,
know. But right now, it's just an equipment thing. We do not have a 5-foot wide piece of snow
Right.
clearing
is it
equipment.
just, how many would you have to buy? Just one?
Just one, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, when you get down to it, they move pretty quick.
Right,
And I think Orange only has one.
okay,
I'm pretty sure that Solon has 3 or 4, but they do, extremely long stretches of main. So,
what's the ballpark price on something like that? Did you even guess?
yeah, I don't know. I don't want to,
Yeah,
I don't want to get hung on a number and, saying that it's, because then it also depends on the piece of the equipment you buy.
mhm.
You want to make sure that it's adequate for what you're doing.
For the Gates Mills Trail, would you guys be able to do that with like sort of down and back, and you would be able?
Yeah,
to
if you would use the same piece of
Mhm.
equipment down, and it would go down and back
Okay,
because it's 10 foot wide. So that,
okay.
you know,
Well, I'd love to open up to you guys' thoughts. Is this something you would entertain?
What's the liability issue if we do that? Steve, do you know?
No different than plowing streets.
Is it? Okay.
And for the homeowners, that
Is
would be
there-
no, if somebody were to accidentally slip and fall off onto their driveway apron or.
Natural accumulations, unless they were
Yeah.
spraying the walkway with water, then they could be in some
Not
difficulty. But
preferred
natural
snow removal?
Natural accumulations do not subject property owners to liability.
Okay.
So
But-
even if let's say, a lot of people have the walkway from the driveway to their front door.
Mhm.
Whether you shovel it or not, you're not exposed to liability. Ohio Supreme Court case law says that.
So let me give you this fact pattern. So we plow, someone else's snow plow comes in, or their snow plow blower or whatever, and they create a big chunk of ice on the path.
That's,
Do they have liability then? And two things. One, do they have liability? And two, whether or not they have liability, are we subjecting them to a lawsuit where they're named in the lawsuit, pay me to go away, they have to hire a lawyer? Because if someone was going to sue, they're going to sue everybody, right?
I can't guarantee there won't be a lawsuit. What I'm telling you is that there would be no liability for the property owner or the city for a lawsuit related to snow, accumulations of snow, plowing of snow, anything of that nature. The only risk of liability is if somebody is intentionally creating a condition that is hazardous.
So a badly done plow job that
Doesn't matter.
creates ice.
Yeah.
That's no issue.
Right.
Just like that's cut and dried.
And the
Yes.
question is, so I understand the reality where someone could file like a motion for summary judgment and try and get rid of the case.
Mhm.
But they could file that motion for summary judgment, and the judge could bring them in for a settlement conference and not rule on the motion for summary judgment because they don't feel like ruling on it quite yet. And then they're subject to costs because, right? And they have an insurance company. I'm just playing it out. I'm just, because I want to be ready if we ever do anything like this, to what's real and not what we think happens.
If someone is sued inappropriately because they don't have liability, but
Well,
I understand, but a nuisance
You
suit
know,
where they're sued.
You never know,
Yeah,
people
someone is
file a
always
suit,
gonna-
they're not a bad person, they file a lawsuit, they name the parties, right?
Well,
You know.
personally, well, I won't talk about the lawyer if he's a
Yeah,
bad
I mean, I
person.
don't,
But
yeah,
the,
nobody in
and I used to defend
in
these
my
things.
world does that, so I'm just,
Right. Well, I used to actually defend early in my career when I was a young
and I
guy.
worked at the court, so.
I defended slip and falls. So their homeowner's insurance is going to cover it, obviously. There's going to be a deductible, and they're going to have a claim experience. I'm not
They're
saying
gonna
it's good or
claim
bad.
experience. I know,
I'm just
that's,
saying
I'm
this is
thinking
what,
through what you're
that's
thinking
what
through.
happens.
The real world.
The reason, a significant reason why we designed and promoted our sidewalk program as we would, trail program, pardon me, we don't use the word side, is to relieve homeowners of any, set aside the liability issue, a maintenance obligation regarding that sidewalk. We have done all we can to disconnect homeowners from a responsibility regarding those walkways. And
And I know we have. I'm just saying,
That's
as you know,
so-
it's not perfect.
no,
We have
the world,
insurance,
we live in an
we sue.
imperfect world.
Your insurance goes up. I'm just saying, we have to be honest, that there is some, not massive risk, but there's some risk because you
Well,
get sued.
there's risk regarding catch basins that are in the front yard. You're walking along the right of way in the front yard, you trip because there's
I know,
the leaves are there.
I know, it's real. I'm just saying it's real.
Life is risky.
Well, yes, but when it happens
Make
to
sure you have
somebody
good
else,
insurance.
that's a
I
cavalier
wanted-
thing to
I
say.
wanted to respond to Jackie's question. I think this is a perfect first assignment for our infrastructure committee, which you are now on. And then we will ask the folks who should do this to do a cost benefit analysis, and we will come up with a recommendation.
I think if we're looking into buying equipment too, we've talked about leaf pickup and we've gotten pushback on that equipment was too much, the manpower would be too great. I think that is something that every homeowner has leaves, not every homeowner has a sidewalk or access to it. I think that if we're looking at equipment, et cetera, I would like to explore some other options.
And
as
I
well.
think we could look at both, and that we can compare the costs and benefits of both. This is what I did for years, so it won't be new.
And I
It won't
have
be new
one
to
more
me.
to throw into the mix if we could, as long as we're doing it. So I did get a call this past week from a homeowner. They live on Gates Mills. They like the trail. Now, interestingly, they're involved with, it's called the Cleveland Hiking Club. And they were interested actually in a different take on it. They were interested, and I'm going to get the wording wrong, packing it, because they're interested in either cross-country skiing or hiking or snowshoeing. So just throwing it out there, I don't know what that cost would be. That would be a different cost, perhaps. I am repeating it. I am not knowledgeable about this. I have not cross-country skied for many, many years, and I don't do this kind of hiking. I hike some, but I don't do this kind. So I just wanted to pass along, if we're doing
What do they
deep
want? I don't
dive.
understand what you're saying.
they, on the trail,
Instead of clearing it,
on
you
the trail.
pack the snow.
I'm not sure if I'm using the right word. They called it packing. Like basically
Oh,
the
they want us to
trail,
pack down a trail for them to ski on,
not
Yeah.
really ski, cross-country or
right,
snowshoe or
cross-country.
maybe those spike shoes or something. I'm not sure. I could be wrong about the shoes. Don't. They were just
They
interested
want you
in
to
a
groom
more
the trail for
Right.
for a run.
Exactly what they want.
What?
They want to groom the trail.
Trail.
They want us to groom, just a minor groom. They weren't talking about major groom.
Isn't it like God created golf courses?
Well, no,
Cross-country skiing.
no, I thought it was an interesting interim. I don't know, but I think
But
they're.
someone was out there, someone posted pictures of them being out there,
See?
cross-country skiing.
So
which is
that,
great.
I'm just
They do
putting it
that.
out there. I got a
Yeah.
specific call about this. I thought it was, if we're bringing that up, maybe this would be some sort of in between, I don't know, cost. I don't know. Because it doesn't sound like they were looking for a lot of maintenance of a trail, but I think they more wanted it marked. So in the winter. So I don't know. It just,
Which is the challenge of clearing
it's a very big
the
challenge.
recreational trail.
It's
The
a-
sidewalk isn't as challenging.
And this was
That's
asked to
challenging.
the recreational trail. They didn't want a big clearing. They didn't want to damage the trail. They were very concerned that we would damage the trail.
Mhm.
That they said that they do some of this at the metro parks, that, they cautioned me, not that I was suggesting it, about putting any salt or anything like that on the trail.
We would not
You know,
salt any
they,
of it.
and I assured them we weren't doing that, that we were investing a lot in this vegetation also, and we weren't doing that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to pass along what I thought was an interesting, I've never had one of these comments, and it was just interesting.
Thank you. Dr. Wong, you've been very patient.
Two
Yes.
questions. One, I thought when we were initially discussing these trails that Steve may have said any clearing of any trails would make the city liable.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the end. of
Any
the sentence.
active clearing of the trails would make the city liable.
That's
No,
what I
that's what I thought
heard that
I
too.
heard.
That's-
multiple times when we
Yeah.
were discussing the trail clearing situation. Steve,
I have no recollection of that.
And just to clear, I wasn't referencing clearing in this case. I was referencing just more primarily.
and I thought that's
Primarily
why we decided not to clear in the first
Well,
place.
And I'm curious too, because I know Orange Village initially was not going to clear those, and then all of a sudden, I feel like this year they started. I'd never.
And
seen
you
those
said like
cleared
in the act of
past.
clearing, you create some sort of liability or something like that, and then
There's a, if you create a hazard, and that's where I'm talking about intentionally.
right.
But snow plowing, just like snow plowing streets, doesn't create a hazard, even if you don't
Okay.
lay down salt. Removing snow from streets does not create an actionable hazard or
Okay.
nuisance.
And then if we were worried about liability, let's say we just focus on the trail because it's in the right of way of the city, we could maybe just clear that. Would any of our current snow plowing equipment be able to go on the 10-foot wide trail,
No.
or is it too heavy?
No, it's not made.
Not made for that.
No,
Okay, so,
it would require some equipment purchase somewhere.
and we would not salt.
And we would not salt, not on Gates Mills Boulevard because of the plantings, not on the sidewalks because of the people's property.
So then
Next to the
ice,
sidewalk.
if we cleared it, then ice could form.
You're clearing it.
And also salt would deteriorate the
No, right.
surfaces much more.
But I'm just like,
Yes.
you know, once you
Much more quickly.
once you clear it, more ice is gonna form. So sometimes it's better to
Right,
walk
salt
on,
is
the
just-
it's at least in my driveway.
very
Right.
I
toxic.
Find
think
that.
when we look at, if we do look at cost benefit, we'll
Okay,
look at all of these aspects of it.
Yeah, that's why just the general, like, this one, I thought it actually, first I thought, well, that's very specific, but it actually was kind of interesting if you, it was sort of a nice, easier route.
Anything else, council? I have no comments. I apologize for, I didn't mean to skip over when I called on the audience before. Mr. Taft.
Rick Taft, 4 Pepper Ridge Road. On the charter. The proposed new charter for Pepper Pike modernizes and in some places clarifies the current charter. But also woven in with the improvements in the new charter, there are a stunning number of what I view as unwise provisions. I have listed 6 major unwise provisions of the new charter, followed by the reason I see them as unwise. I apologize to any unwise provision I have inadvertently left out. 1, requiring 4 years of residency before serving as mayor and 2 years of residency before serving on council, to me is unwise. The proposed charter requires 4 pre-service years of residency for the mayor and 2 pre-service years for a city council member. This seems to me a truly terrible idea. Pepper Pike voters, not some arbitrary charter requirement, should determine whether a candidate knows the city well enough to serve in elective office. Why turn away a candidate of ability and civic commitment based on an arbitrary rule? What about someone like me, who grew up in this community, moved away, and chose to come back? Stanley Edelstein did not confront a special residency requirement when I moved back to Pepper Pike, and he urged me to run for the council seat being vacated by Gene Seaton. 2, having council appoint all the members of a periodic charter review commission is also unwise. There is a theme that runs through this proposed new charter. The theme is council arrogating, in my view, too much unchecked power to itself. If council succeeds in coaxing the community to pass this new charter that, in my view, arrogates too much power to council, do you think in 6 years, a charter review commission appointed entirely by council, pardon me if I make any error after reading the charter review report several times. Perfection eludes all of us. Do you think a charter review commission appointed entirely by council will do anything to push back against too much power in council's hands? I don't think such a commission would bite the hand that created it. 3, allowing council to remove the mayor from office is unwise. There are already adequate removal procedures to which the law director has made reference for local officials under Ohio law, and they are, as he also pointed out, much faster than what you are proposing, although Tony Gentile mentioned that you could, under your new provision, act immediately. That's not usually the way due process works. This provision proposed by the new charter will drastically shift power away from the mayor and to council. The new charter says that council is to remove the mayor only for good cause, but what if council acts like a kangaroo court and finds good cause where many others would see only normal political differences? What check and balance is set forth in the new charter that assures there will be a right of appeal by the mayor to a more disinterested body? None. 4, allowing council to remove from office the top 2 mayoral appointees, the law director and the finance director. This drastic provision is an extension of the drastic power of the council to remove the mayor. Together, these power shifts invite Turner Pepper Pike into a gladiatorial arena where a council doesn't even need to act to assert its removal power. It can just threaten to act. The mayor may not resign in the face of threats, but his appointees might. All council has to do to make the atmosphere profoundly unpleasant where a mayoral appointee is to lightly threaten and then more ominously threaten to initiate a removal inquiry. The threats could even be made from time to time with no serious intention of ever acting on them. In due course, the appointee will simply decide, I don't need this harassment. I don't need to work in a hostile environment. I give up. I will leave on my own to go work in a more friendly place. The new charter drastically diminishes the mayor's role in the city planning commission. What's the deal that's aimed for here? The new charter would hand to council total dominance of the city planning commission. The question of who should be appointed to the commission that deals with important property issues throughout the city, the chief executive officer would have the same voting power as a single council member. Chairmanship of the commission would be stripped from the mayor and handed to a council representative. The new charter delivers too much to the council and takes too much away from the office of the mayor. There's a good idea in the creation of a council president. Why not? Helps organize council thinking. But that has been ridden to a bad outcome by having the council president preside at the regular meetings of council and the mayor. The foolishness of handing the gavel at regular meetings to the council president is obscured by 2 linguistic accidents that can easily lead even well-meaning people astray. The first and most important accident is that the regular meetings of council and the mayor are called council meetings. Is that an accurate term? No. These are meetings designed to serve the interest of the entire community by regularly assembling all the elected officers of the city, both legislative and executive, to consider all aspects of law and operations that may be important for the well-being of Pepper Pike. Were it not for a natural penchant for simplicity in nomenclature, these meetings would have been called leadership meetings rather than council meetings. If both houses of Congress and the President of the United States were to have some extraordinary joint session with lawmaking power, would you call it a congressional meeting? Let us assume our wonderfully frequent plenary meetings of all our elected leaders continue to be called council meetings. Does that traditional name mean that such meetings should be provided over by the senior person in the legislative branch? No. Pursuant to the tradition that has prevailed since Pepper Pike was founded, such meetings should be presided over by the city's senior elected official. The focus of electoral accountability, its chief executive officer, its mayor. The other linguistic trap is found in the name of the proposed senior officer of council, its name, president. The first 7 letters of the title president compose the word preside. Isn't that a hint that the president should preside? No. It is a red herring, pulling us off the trail of sound thinking, sound organizational thinking. The person who is elected to lead the city as its CEO should preside at regularly scheduled meetings of the city's leadership. These meetings are designed to conduct not just the business of council, but the business of governing the city as a whole. I submit these thoughts to a council. Verklempt. This matters. I submit these thoughts to a council in which I served for 4 terms and to the electorate that accorded me that great opportunity. I submit these thoughts humbly, since I am well aware that we all struggle to succeed in the difficult pursuit of wisdom. But I do submit these thoughts with heat. I feel that the proposed new charter contains so many unwise provisions that if council puts it on the ballot in its present form, the community should defeat the proposed charter decisively. Rick Taft, copies to the local media.
Thank you, Mr. Taft. Does anyone else want to speak tonight? So let's go ahead.
Here's one of it. A comment on the snow removal, the sidewalk and rail. The main selling point on that, so, was the safety issue for people walking. And if you don't clear those, what are you saying? You're telling people to walk in the streets in the winter. To me, that's counterintuitive. So I would strongly suggest looking at the snow removal. And although there would be a cost, the kind of equipment to do that is not like the laws or the kind of equipment we're talking about, like for lead collection or cleaning streets or anything like that. Yes, maybe some additional wood, maybe a little bit of additional cost, but nothing I see as being substantially major. So I would ask that that be taken a serious look at.
I can't get it to turn off. Let me try to one. Sorry.
Do you have it harnessed?
It's my mother keeps calling me. Something
If
must
you
be
need to
wrong.
step out, go ahead.
Something must be wrong, but I don't know. It's
You need to
okay.
step out, go
We're
ahead.
almost done. I'll call her back.
Thank you, Ms. Leskovic. Mrs. Taft?
Susan Taft for Pepper Ridge
I'm
Road.
turning off my phone. Thank you.
I was here last Thursday and testified my thoughts. And it was helpful at that meeting when Councilman Scott Noel, who's not here tonight, referred to the National Civic League's guide for road commissions. I found the guide online and I want to share a few key provisions.
Mrs. Taft, could you please just either come forward a little or speak up? You have a quiet voice and you may have weather in
I
your,
have weather. Should I repeat any of that?
I heard you.
it may just be me and my hearing, so.
I can hear.
Well, I have
Okay,
really
if they
bad-
can hear you, that's fine.
Okay, I'll try to talk louder. So I'm drawing on the National Civic League's guide and guidelines for charter commissions, which was a great document. to get to look at. I didn't know it existed. The guidelines warn that a charter should provide stability and consistency to a local government. It is critical that the reasons behind the effort be understood and carefully scrutinized. I see these changes that are being proposed as disruptive, destabilizing. I also think that they will greatly decrease responsiveness of city government. We have great responsiveness with the mayor, with the powers that he carries. And I also think it's going to decrease transparency. It's going to be harder to see where things are happening from the public's point of view. And with all due respect to Mr. Gentile and Mr. LeMay, I'm not going to argue with you about your rebuttals, but I do maintain that we do not need to change structure out of fear of a future autocratic mayor. Why do that? Maybe we should be writing in, what if we have a tornado? Or what if there's an earthquake? Lots of things could happen. Why are we changing the structure in advance of any threat to a well-functioning government? It also is certainly not necessary, according to the National Civic League Guide, to change a structure to improve communication. That is easily handled through mere procedural processes. Does not need to have the charter changed. Additionally, there have been no reasons provided to us, the citizens, on why these recommendations are put forth to the community in a sealed and unchangeable document. This document cannot be touched. It's going to go to voters in May. Oh, is that incorrect?
We're allowed to do anything we want to that document.
So you could open up the document.
We could amend, modify, or reject the document as a whole.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Then I would urge you to consider some of the heartfelt feedback you've gotten in this council and will probably get in the next meeting as well. And engage with us in dialogue about it. Give us a chance to talk it through. I think that we should have, if we're going to have input, then something needs to happen with that input. And up to this point, I have had the impression that our input was irrelevant because this was just going to be put on the May ballot. If that's not true, I would love to engage further with some of you, and I'm sure my husband would, and other people as well. And finally, how a charter commission is appointed is clearly important. Here's what the National Civic League's Guide has to say about membership on the commission. The commission is composed of community residents who are not involved in day-to-day governmental operations. It should be detached, objective, and impartial. Special mention should be made about the role of elected officials. I'm quoting here. While in many cases the mayor and/or council plays a role in the appointment of commission members, the involvement of elected officials should end at that point. The charter process functions best when it is rooted in citizen involvement, rather than one influenced intentionally or unintentionally by public officials, political officials directly serving as members. Our charter commission largely disregarded this advice. 3 council members were designated as liaisons with the commission and were deeply involved with its functioning. The minutes also note the mayor's attendance at some of the meetings. To me, this high degree of involvement of elected city officials and their influence, again shown in the minutes, compromised the independence of the commission. This compromise of independence is particularly serious when the purpose of the commission, beyond updating language and resolving communication problems, has been so vague until tonight when Mr. Lemay had more to say about that. But it is hard not to worry that without a clear problem to solve, and with so much input from council, the commission interjected significant alterations in the city government structure and now seeks to enact these changes for invisible problems to most of us, not in need of fixing.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Let me make a, if I may respond to Ms. Taft, there's the Civic League document that you referenced says on page 19, during meetings, the commission hears testimony from public officials, staff, representatives of community organization, and members of the public. So it invites elected officials' participation in the commission.
I agree. I agree with that. I think it was quite a bit more than that, though. It's hard to tell from the minutes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes. Hi, William Thompson, 30500 Providence. I'll say in advance, I had a whole speech written and then we talked about things tonight right off of it, so please forgive my off-the-cuff remarks. First, I'm going to say thank you to Mr. Lemay for putting your thoughts together, your eloquent thoughts, because I know you were attempting to address a lot of the concerns that we had, and I think your comments were, genuine and well thought out. I do have to say that I agree with a great deal of what you said. See, this is why you write down in advance. I like that you point out that the city is doing very well, that the city is not broken. I also like that you point out the need for continual improvement is not a bad thing, right? So changing something in absence of a problem, I think that's valid. That's a valid point to make. But I'll also say that the scope of change needs to be commensurate with something, right? If or a horrible situation, I think we can all agree wholesale changes are completely appropriate. But in absence of that, as we all refer to a problem to solve, I think it's very hard to swallow non-incremental changes. If we were just proposing, I would like to formalize the relationship between the mayor and let's say the vice mayor, I'll pick on, of, hey, I think it's a good idea if we meet prior to a council meeting to kind of pre-negotiate. I think that's a fantastic idea. But as Mrs. Taft pointed out, why do you need a charter change to legislate good communication? That's very hard to see. I have more comments, but I think the task is quite a fine job, and I don't want to try to best what they said because I can't. So I'm going to close it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Real quick. Vera Bar Savage, 29600 Shaker Boulevard. I want to thank the Tafts. I agree wholeheartedly with what they said. And Mr. Thompson, I just want to record to show that I support the current charter. I feel some of these changes are just too drastic. We have had the charter for 59 years and is working well. And I support the mayor for what he is doing. I do not support this proposed city charter change. In my opinion, a lot of it I've heard is conversation, problems with communication, which cannot be legislated. That is not something you can legislate. And even Susan Taft was talking about the National Civic League, and they actually state that, you can't eliminate political infighting and make elected officials achieve consensus. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mark.
Yeah, Gerard Bartasavage, 29600 Shaker Boulevard. I'm going to be very short. I'm not for the change of the charter. It's been working fine. And you say everything is working fine. It's not broken, but well, I don't see the but. I mean, we're not being transparent. You could sit here and talk all you want about a possibility. But right now we have a fine mayor with fine leadership and everything's going fine. I would really hate to see that being disrupted. Mr. Gentili said that, we weren't supposed to respond to people's comments. I'm surprised we're getting response from people's comments, but I want to go back to Mr. Gentili said about social media and communication. I have couple thousand Facebook members that I'm connected to. Many of them are on Pepper Pike. And again, I have to say, Mr. Newell, had a conversation with him and he commended me for my outreach of our citizens and communicating with them. And they appreciate that too. And that is part of the reason why we were so successful in getting sidewalks approved by the social media. So, Mr. Gentili, you contacted me and asked me to get you help to get on social media. I don't even believe you ever even got on social media. Some of our council members are on social media. You have the opportunity to use that tool to reach out to people. Reach out to your constituents. And I don't remember, I don't see where you're reaching out to the constituents. And like I say, that's a perfect tool to reach out. So to chastise me about the social media, we're going to continue to use it. It's an up and coming thing to use social media to communicate with the people, residents, everyone uses it. Which surprises me because a year ago, council voted on 4 committees: finance, road infrastructure, safety, and parks and beautification and communications. Some of these council committees have not reported on any accomplishments, or I believe didn't even meet during the past year. Am I right? The committees are now up for renewal. And if the council cannot accomplish responsibilities with their committees, how can they manage additional responsibilities like you want to do with this charter? So, and in closing, as a military veteran and retired with the federal government, the Department of Veterans Affairs, I'm saddened at how the council treats our veterans, especially returned resident Colonel Robert Rice. Colonel Rice's credentials are impeccable. He has attended council meetings and charter review committee meetings and deserves the council's respect by at least responding to his wishes and even having a conversation with him. In closing, Pepper Pike City Council is not properly representing your constituents, has divided the community, added a lot of emotions and drama to meetings, and has not stayed focused on the business aspect of our city. That's the way I feel, and that's the way many residents in our community feel. So I would hope with your new committees that you represent us as council members. And I noticed when we're reviewing the charter, everything was a focus on the mayor. I hardly saw anything focused on the council members. For some of you, I don't even believe you even know what your responsibilities are. Your council members, you represent the residents. When residents communicate with you, send you something, they may not be asking a question. They may be making a statement. They're responding. You've always asked for community involvement. Well, there it is. At the minimum, you could at least respond to them and say, "Thank you. We appreciate your comments." Right?
All right. Thank you,
So
sir.
that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. If that is it for the evening, we stand adjourned until our next, I'm going to announce it since we're still on our new schedule for cycle, the Tuesday of, what's the date?
We have a special meeting next week.
Oh, we have a special meeting before
But
that.
you're correct. You're correct in like their
Okay, so when is
Tuesday.
the special meeting?
Special meeting's next
Do we
Wednesday,
need that meeting?
and then the
Why?
council meeting is.
We have a council meeting.
Okay,
Right,
so
we have a
our,
council meeting on the 28th. Can't fit me the Thursday.
our special meeting will be next Wednesday at 7:30.
Right.
And then our council meeting will be the following Tuesday.
The 28th.
Yes.
Okay, the 20th. Okay.
Why do we need to say?
We stand.
You're gonna put that in Joe's office.
Sheila, did I send